And please welcome Matthew Modine.
Thank you very much.
Hello, sir.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're sitting on the microphone. Don't do that. Don't do that. So, welcome, Matthew. Welcome back to London.
Thank you very much. And
I-
thank you guys for coming out in the rain and in a subway or tube strike. That's very generous of you. Very kind of you.
Was this movie the singular experience of your movie making life? Is this why you've made you wrote a book about it, and you've now turned this into an app? Does Full Metal Jacket stand out for you as the film of your career?
I wouldn't want to say that because there's so many amazing filmmakers that I've worked with that are still alive, and would get really upset if I said that was. But there's no question that the impact that Full Metal Jacket has had on my life, my career, is immeasurable. You know, it's an extraordinary film, and it's a testament to Stanley Kubrick and his art. That the film continues to have a relevance today, and you know, there's so many films that get made that are kind of disposable, and we forget about them after a short period of time. And I think that you find with almost every single one of Stanley Kubrick's films that they do stand the test of time and continue to have relevance and become even more significant as time goes by.
Before we talk more about the film, and I suspect we're going to get a lot of good questions about the film from this audience, let's talk about the app itself and where it came from, because you maintained a diary during the making of the movie. Was that off your own back necessarily, or did Stanley encourage you to do that?
Well, you know, I was playing a journalist in the film, and I was given a small diary as a prop to carry around while I was working, and which I started scribbling notes in. And as time would go by, I started. My grandmother always encouraged me to keep a diary, and she said to help you understand who you are and understand the passage of time. So I was someone who kept journals, and so it was a natural thing to do. And then as a journalist in the film, it was something that seemed like a good idea to do. And yeah, but Stanley certainly didn't discourage it, and there were several times during the filming that he asked me to read my diary out loud and share some of the things that were inside of the diary, and which was good because it forced me to be accurate and to try to keep it interesting, because if he asked me to read it, you don't want people going like, "This is the stupidest, most boring diary I've ever heard in my life,"
There's a passage in the diary where you and Stanley had a falling out. Did you read any of those passages out to him at that time when you broke his rule, so to speak?
No,
I
didn't share any of that with him. No. The rule that he's talking about is that Stanley, very early on in the filming, he invited me into his Winnebago, and he was making some coffee, and he said, "I have a rule that there's no bad ideas. So if I make a suggestion, don't say, 'Well, that's stupid. That would never work,' because it's non-productive. What would be the sense of saying that some?" He said, "So don't say that. What the rule is that we'll share information, and if you don't think it's a good idea, say, or we could do this, or we could try that. But don't say it's dumb, or don't say it's stupid, non-productive." And in the diary, if you read it, you see that I broke the rule. It's a longer story, but it's a good one. I broke that rule, and I actually I swore and at him because I thought. But it's a good story. It's in the diary.
And the diary itself. At what point did that become the book, the Full Metal Jacket diary?
Well, I had this medium format Rolleiflex camera that a friend of mine had given me as a present to go to London. He said, Stanley Kubrick has this tremendous background in still photography. So if you learn how to master this Rolleiflex medium format camera and show up on the set, with it around your neck and kind of show it to Stanley, he'll be impressed because you know how to use a really beautiful piece of art camera, and so I showed up early on in the rehearsals with this Rolleiflex camera and was kind of trying to show it to Stanley, and he finally looked at me. He said, "What are you doing with that old piece of shit?" And I said, what do you mean? This is a Rolleiflex camera. This is a great camera. And he goes, "Yeah, it's a good camera, but there's better." And he talked me into buying this new camera that had come out of Minolta with lots of bells and whistles and automatic focus. And it was something he'd clearly researched. And he said, "That's the camera. If you're going to take pictures on my set, that's the camera you should have." And so he sent Leon Vitali, his assistant, to go out and get one for me. And I started using it, but I didn't like it. I didn't like how the camera worked and functioned. But I fell in love with this medium format Rolleiflex camera, which is the camera that I use to take most of the pictures that are in the film. There are some of the 35 millimeter ones, but mostly the medium format. And I'd just like to take a second to acknowledge somebody who's a great contributor to the diary. That fella there. Stand up for a second, Tony. Just stand up so they can see who you are. That's Tony Hayes. And Tony Hayes was in the film from the beginning to the end. He was a soldier in Vietnam. He was also in boot camp, and he contributed for the app for some really beautiful photographs that he took on set. Which Jan Harlan's here on the front row, and you didn't have permission to take pictures, so you're going to be arrested and nicked when you go.
You also have some Polaroids that Stanley took on set. In the app as well.
Yeah, there's a couple Polaroids. The Stanley would still use an old Polaroid camera, a land camera, the ones where you pull the film out of the side and then you let it develop and peel them open for exposure tests. And he gave me a couple of those exposure tests. Those are in the app, which is not in the book, in the Full Metal Jacket Diary book. But those are extras that were added to the Full Metal Jacket Diary.
Absolutely. So the book comes out a few years ago. It's a limited edition, 20,000 copies.
20,000.
Is that correct? At what point then did the app rear into view?
Well, I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about being in the Apple Store, and the Steve Jobs' idea that these kind of talks about things that are made on a Mac. And this book not only was made on a Mac, but the inception, the idea for the Full Metal Jacket Diary app, iPad app, was generated from somebody who I think is a real genius. His name is Adam Rakoff, and he's not one of the geniuses at the Genius Bar. He's an actual genius. Adam Rakoff.
These guys are geniuses too.
Yeah. Okay. They're really smart guys that know how to fix computers, fix a Mac. But Adam Rakoff, he loved the book, and he knew that the book was only 20,000 copies and that the book had sold out really quickly. And he said, how would you feel if we turned your book into an app? And I said, what do you mean, turn it into an app? He goes, well, we'd do something quite extraordinary. We'll take your book and you'll read it, and then we'll do sound effects. We'll create a new music. We'll generate new music for the film, for the book. Then we'll take all the images that you took in the film, the negatives, and we'll do high-res scans of them, and so that people can open them up on an iPad and be able to look at details that you wouldn't be able to see from just looking at a photograph in a book. And we'll create something that'll be really extraordinary. And I said, well, wow, that sounds really great. Can we do it? He said, yeah, I think so, because it'd never been done before. It's what we call an appumentary. and I said, I'll do it, but with the understanding that what we create has to be something that Kubrick and the Kubrick estate would be proud of. To have that standard of excellence that Stanley Kubrick would look at it and say, this is something extraordinary, this is something beautiful and unique.
So did you collaborate with the Kubrick estate all the way through the making of the app, just to clear things?
I didn't have to. They've adopted me. I'm an adopted son of Jan Harlan and Christian, and I'm still very good friends with Stanley Kubrick's daughter, who's an extraordinary human being, and did under a pseudonym. Abigail Mead did the music for Full Metal Jacket, and of course that's Stanley's daughter, and she's brilliant. And there's another documentary that you can see, and I think it's one of the most interesting documentaries. Well, it is one of the most interesting. It's not the most interesting about the making of The Shining. Has anybody ever seen that documentary? Yeah, it's quite extraordinary. And Vivian was 15 years old, 14 years old when she made that documentary. And I think that what I love about the film is that they never expose the magic, that they always show the rehearsal kind of process. And as soon as you get to the point where you might see somebody acting from an angle other than what you see in the film, you cut to the film. So they never show the magic of filmmaking. They show a process, but they never show you the hand. You know, it's they reserve the magic that is Stanley's secret. You know, that's wonderful.
Absolutely. We have a demo of the app. It's about 2.5 minute demo. Don't know if you want to talk through some things that they're playing as the demo goes on, or we'll just see how it goes. Let's have a look at the demo. Thanks. It's a beautiful app. I mean, how closely involved were you with Adam on the design? Did he keep you briefed? Did he keep you involved as it progressed?
Yeah, I mean, it was based on the design of the book, the Full Metal Jacket Diary book, and then it had to be re-envisioned and to having that kind of experience to be something that was a deeply immersive experience. And it's never been done before. I mean, I don't know if I just said it, but we call it an appumentary. And there's a lot of filmmakers now that are studying how we made this app and thinking to use it, like Christopher Nolan for his films, for the Dark Knight Rises films, for Inception, because they have so much material that they like to share with audiences. But they don't know how to do it. So they're looking at this and going, "Wow, this is really extraordinary. What an interesting way to continue to market a film, but also to give people that love the film an opportunity to learn more about the making of the film." You know, the thing that's extraordinary about the iPad to me is that Stanley and his art director, his team, envisioned an iPad all the way back in 2001. Jan Harlan, what year is 2001? 68. So I mean, there's on that trip from Earth to the Moon, they're carrying iPads. The woman is sort of, you know, walking with those funny shoes and carrying an iPad. So it's extraordinary. I mean, in 2001 is one of those rare science fiction films about space that still continues to look like it's the future. You know, you look at Star Wars now and it kind of looks, you know, the what's the name of the spaceship that Han Solo flies? The Millennium Falcon kind of looks like a joke. I mean, it looks kind of silly. It looks like it was made with plastic tubes, and which it was.
Now you're getting into sacrilegious territory. I'm not. I'm not sure. But
fundamentally, you still know absolutely nothing.
Yeah. This man that I'm referring to, Jan Harlan, is Stanley Kubrick's brother-in-law, and we just give him a round of applause. Not only was he Stanley's brother-in-law, but he was his producing partner and responsible for I don't know how many years how many films is from.
Since Napoleon, which was drawn by
yeah. 69. 1969 to all the way up through Eyes Wide Shut, and all the way now working with Steven Spielberg and what's remarkable is, I don't know if you had the opportunity to see the stuff that's in the archive here in London at the university, but there's a traveling around the world is the Stanley Kubrick exhibition, which kind of broke records at the Los Angeles Contemporary Museum of Art. Has been in Germany and I mean,
but 10 countries already, and the
countries.
next stop will be. Last time it was in Sao Paulo. It just closed there, and now it goes to Krakow. And then in September in Toronto.
Yeah.
And we are now working on Seoul and on Tokyo and on Delhi. Maybe one day it comes to London.
Maybe one day it will come to London, yeah.
It was in Paris and Amsterdam and Rome and Berlin, but there you are.
So I got to say, the Los Angeles exhibition, in my opinion, has been the most beautifully art-directed. And I mean, the experience at the Museum of Modern Art in Los Angeles was extraordinary.
It was fantastic. And we had 242,000 visitors.
Yeah. He's kind of popular, this Stanley Kubrick guy. I think he's got a bright future.
Speaking of which,
I think we should keep him.
let's take some questions from you guys now. If you have any questions at all for Matthew, just put your hands up, and right here, right in the front row. Thank you.
Hello? Anyway, hi, thank you for coming. I love your work, and I just wonder, what is the best feature in this application that you are most proud of, and why?
I love the picture that you saw of Stanley smiling, you know, and just to the right side of that frame is his daughter Vivian, who was making a documentary about the making of Full Metal Jacket, and he was laughing because he said he felt like he was at a film premiere, that I was taking pictures and his daughter was filming him, and he felt kind of silly and laughed, and he had such a wonderful laugh and such a beautiful smile, and so I like that photograph. There's some photographs with my wife that I really love that are in that's my wife there on the front row. Her name's Matthew Modine. And we've been married for 34 years. Yeah. And you know, she still loves me because she brought me a baked potato. She knew I hadn't eaten. She brought me a baked potato. You know, that's real love. If you want to get a guy, bring him a baked potato. Yeah.
Any particular topping or just a baked potato?
No, it was just a baked potato.
Oh, okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, it was naked. It was a jacket, and it was in its jacket.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, not a full metal one, presumably.
Yeah.
I believe you, sir. Yes, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
When you first saw the film for the very first time, what was going through your mind, and did you recognise any of the takes out of the many takes that were used?
I think the first time I saw the film, I couldn't breathe. I mean, it was such an extraordinary experience. You know, it was such a powerful movie. I saw it in New York City on 3rd Avenue across the street from Bloomingdale's, and those theaters are gone now. But it was a real punch in the stomach. You know, it's such a powerful film, and I think the thing that I was really confused by was when Joker makes that decision to take the young Vietnamese girl's life. There was something very specific that I wanted to accomplish with that film. I wanted the audience to feel the death of that girl. I wanted the audience to feel the responsibility of taking another person's life. You know, that it was nothing heroic, there was nothing beautiful, there was nothing. That I wanted to splash blood on the audience, and Stanley and I talked about it, and when I saw that, I felt that he must have done something. He must have slowed down the film or something, and I called him, and he said, "No, I didn't do anything. It's all you." And I think that we accomplished that. That war is such a terrible thing. It's such a terrible solution to a problem. You know, it doesn't really ever solve the problem. It creates greater problems. For me, when I look at Stanley Kubrick's films, whether they're about Paths of Glory or Dr. Strangelove or Full Metal Jacket, but in each of his films, you know, he's often criticized for being a cold filmmaker, and I don't feel that at all. I think that he's very warm and personable and honest, that he's not looking at world and life through a kind of filtered lens, but looking at it with a very honest, surgical kind of necessity, that we need to look at ourselves, that if we continue to solve problems with violence, then this great experiment that we call humanity is destined to fail. And I think that with each of his films, there's tremendous humanity in his films.
Again, this is in the app. It's covered in the app. But that ending proved quite problematic, didn't it? It took a long time to film. It went through several iterations. I don't know if you can talk about that and how difficult it was. Yeah.
Well, he's talking about the end after I shoot the sniper,
yeah.
Presumably. After I make that decision to take the girl's life, Adam Baldwin, who played Animal Mother, he has a machete on his back, he carried the entire film for this purpose, was that he took the machete out. And the people, if you remember in the film, they're saying, "Wow, Joker, you're hard. You're born again hard." And he gets jealous about the fact that they're saying that I've done something, you know, that they couldn't do. and he takes the machete out and he chops the girl's head off, and holds it up into each of our faces like the Medusa and says, "Hard, who's hard now, motherfuckers?" and throws it over his shoulder, and it was too much. It was inappropriate. It wasn't. I mean, it was good that we filmed it because then you understand what you don't need, but it was too much. But it took a long time, and the funny thing, because I mentioned it took a long time. One of the things that Stanley said about making films is he said nobody would go up to Mozart and say, "Hey, how long did it take you to write that song?" or "How long did it take you to write that book?" or "How long did it take you to make that painting, Picasso?" And he said, but somehow we asked that question of filmmakers, and it is an art form. It can be something that's just a commercial venture, but for him it was a great art form, making films. And he said, I don't know why people are so caught up with this thing about time, and that, well, you can shoot the movie in 3 months, or you can shoot it in 6, or you can shoot it in the time that's necessary to tell a good story. And he, with a great producer like Jan, created an environment for making his films where, I mean, in the case of Full Metal Jacket, I don't think that we were $10 million or $15 million. He was very careful. He was a really good producer and kept the costs of making his films at a reasonable rate.
Hi. Just wondered whether the actors were allowed to improvise at all on set, or whether Stanley Kubrick insisted that you all kept to the strict letter of the script.
Well, Leon said that during the auditioning of the extras, I don't know if you did, Tony, did you get auditioned by Lee Ermey? Did you have to put yourself on tape with Lee Ermey yelling at you and stuff like that? Yeah. So when that process was happening, they were using Lee Ermey to audition the people that were going to be the soldiers in Vietnam and the guys in the boot camp. And Lee Ermey would get in their faces and yell at them, and so Stanley could look at their auditions and say, "Oh, I like him, let's take him." But while that was going on, Lee Ermey was saying things that he'd learned as a drill instructor in the United States Marine Corps, and there were very colorful things that he said. Yeah, reach around is an extraordinary one. So they took the things that Lee Ermey said and had them transcribed and typed up, and then they went through and picked through. Leon said it was 1,500 pages of stuff that Lee Ermey, different things Lee Ermey said. I don't think that's possible. It could have been 1,500 pages, but I won't argue because I didn't see them.
The problem was he couldn't repeat.
Oh, yeah. Yes, he couldn't, yeah.
It was an endless.
Yeah. He said he couldn't repeat the well, go ahead, you have the microphone now.
And once we decided to let him play the part, which was well into his rehearsing it. Leon then worked with him and said, "Okay, you got to stick to this. Yeah. Now let's write it down, learn the line, and don't vary it. Otherwise, we can't cut the film."
Because he wasn't a trained actor. He was what he was. He's a United States Marine, and whatever he was feeling at that particular moment, whatever he might have seen in a person's eyes, that's what he wanted to say. Like, how tall are you? I didn't know they stacked shit that high. You're from Texas. Only steers and queers come from Texas. I mean, all those kind of crazy things that he said. But there was improvisation. It's funny because people assume that because he was Stanley Kubrick that there was no deviation in the things, but part of that how did you say it, Jan, just now, that it takes time to make a movie? It takes...
Well,
what
I said, it is easy to make a film, but it's very hard to make a good film.
Yeah.
And a great film, I must say, is almost a miracle. Like any great symphony, any great painting, any great novel, it doesn't happen that easily.
Yeah.
And for example, just the beginning of Full Metal Jacket is a concentration of unrealistic reality. And in that respect, it's like Shakespeare. I mean, nobody would ever say, "Oh, Romeo and Juliet is totally unrealistic. They get married the next day." That's not the point.
Yes. But there was an improvisational method to of him trying to find in Vivian's documentary film, the little pieces that we have. I'm in the trailer with Vincent D'Onofrio, and we're trying to figure out what to say in that final scene in the latrine when the drill instructor gets shot, and Stanley says, "I'm improvising dialogue," and Stanley says, "It's the right emotion. It's the wrong. It's too many words. So how do we take all those words and condense that into a few words? Are those live rounds? Yes." Full Metal Jacket, so to find the right words is the trick, so through the improvisation, you find the right way to effectively and economically tell the story.
So what was that scene like scripted then, in the latrine?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I don't
longer,
know,
presumably, or
it was different. I mean, there was another scene that was changed quite dramatically when I meet Adam Baldwin in the pagoda in Vietnam, and he says what was scripted was, he says, you're a combat photographer. You seen any combat? And I stick my M16 under his chin, was scripted, and I say, look, man, I got twice as many hours in country as you. Get out of my face or I'm gonna blow your fucking head off. Or something like that. And it was very kind of, if I were Clint Eastwood, I could have pulled it off, and I'm not Clint Eastwood. So Stanley said, it's not working, let's go to the trailer and have a talk. And he said, what would you do back in Utah if some guy like Adam Baldwin came up and tried to make a fight with you? And I said, a guy like Adam Baldwin, I'd make a joke. Really? You'd make a joke? Yeah, I'd make a joke. Because a big guy like Adam Baldwin's not a threat. The guys that I'd had trouble in my life with were little tough guys, fireplugs, guys like Arliss Howard that played cowboy. Those are the dangerous guys. Those are the guys that want to take off a big guy's head. So I would treat them differently. Really, you'd make a joke. And what kind of joke? And I said, well, there's some great stuff in the book where, the John Wayne lines, only after you eat the peanuts out of my shit. And so that scene came out of the fact that a scene that was scripted didn't work, and I wasn't the right actor to deliver the scene as scripted. So it came through an improvisational process.
I think we got time for a couple of last questions. Yes, once again, back in the front row. Thank you.
Okay, so do you remember about the rule that you mentioned earlier? Yeah.
Kubrick's rule.
Oh, the rule.
Yeah. So I just wonder, what do you think about building a community area within the application? Because I just experienced, you two were talking and people were very engaged, and it's exciting. So I just wonder if you have some kind of community area building in application, so that people have the opportunity to share experience or comment or pictures. It's make it more fun, basically.
Yeah. We talked about doing it. I mean, for instance, with my friend Tony. That the interesting thing about the making of the film is what I want to call this area of the Full Metal Jacket Diary iPad app is Full Metal Jacket Rashomon, because Rashomon is a film about how something happens and everybody has a different perspective and a different way of interpreting what it was that happened. And this is the case with the film, that everybody that worked on the film has a different impression, a different story about how Lee Ermey got the job, for instance, that because he was a technical advisor on the film who became, they replaced the actor that was playing the part with Lee Ermey. Now I have my version of the story of what happened, and I've heard, met other actors that worked on the film, and everybody had a different interpretation, a different story about how Lee Ermey got the job, that he beat somebody up, that he always planned on taking the job away from this guy named Tim Colcheri. Everybody. So that this kind of dialogue of sharing ideas and experiences about what happened is very interesting, because everybody has a different perspective. So it's Full Metal Jacket Rashomon. Yeah.
So could you go back and amend the app, perhaps, and include that sort of stuff?
Yeah. If the app is successful, if you all go home and download the app tonight,
smooth. I like it.
It's on sale now too. I mean, it's you get the first chapter for free.
Yeah.
And then it's I don't know how much it is in pounds. It's probably £6, £7.
$6.99, I believe.
$6.99.
$6.99.
Come on.
And yes, please. There's a lady over here. Thank you.
Hello. Do you think you could do a follow-up film to, as a returning veteran to Vietnam, either as the Joker or maybe the son of the Joker, or do a similar thing to Jesus Was a Commie?
Did you see Jesus Was a Commie?
Yes, that was the word.
Isn't it really good? Isn't it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
This is, communism has a particular kind of power in America. The word communism, it's evil, it's the Antichrist, it's the destruction of the planet. And so I made this film called Jesus Was a Commie. It's really not about Jesus or communism, but it's about humanity and about people working together to solve problems. That the problems that we face environmentally, politically, religiously are much bigger than the problems that, I mean, it's a really good film. You can see it online for free. Jesus Was a Commie on Film Annex, or if you just Google Jesus Was a Commie, Matthew Modine, you'll find the film. And follow me on Twitter, and I'll tell you how, yeah, Matthew Modine, at Matthew Modine, and I'll give you a link to it. And I'm really good on Twitter. I like responding. I think it's a fascinating, did I meet you on Twitter? Yeah? What's your name on Twitter? At 37 Films. How you doing, 37 Films?
Is that your real name?
Right? I'm really good about responding. Yeah, yeah. And my wife hates me for it because I'm always. She doesn't hate me, no. It's interesting because Carrie thinks that, she said this, and I always think about it, that John Lennon might still be alive if he'd had if Twitter would have existed at that time and he had an account, because it's such a great way for somebody like John Hinckley to be able to have the kind of experience that he wanted to have with. I don't think I have any John Hinckley's, but I might. You see, that's the interesting thing about it. And if I did, would I block them?
That's always the question, isn't it? And just to follow up on what the lady asked, would you ever consider, do actors consider what may have become of their characters after the film?
To get back to your question, yeah. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, it could be the son of Joker, which is a good title, Son of Joker. You know what? I told Stanley Kubrick, I said we should call it, because when people in London at that time, when they say, "What's the movie you're making?" I say, "Full Metal Jacket," and they say, "Bull Metal Jacket?" No, Full Metal Jacket. What's that? Full Metal Jacket. What is it? I said, "Well, it's a casing on a bullet." And you'd spend 5 minutes explaining the film to them, and they go, "It's not a good title." And so I came up with Euthanasia. Euthanasia. And but spelled Y-O-U-T-H, not euthanasia, E-U. Don't ask me to spell it. And Stanley just looked at me like that was the stupidest thing. He broke the rule. He looked at me like no. With Full Metal Jacket's a good title, is what he said. He didn't say it was stupid. He said it's Full Metal Jacket is a good title, and it is. I mean, how great is Full Metal Jacket? It's amazing. You know how many. This movie has become part of the zeitgeist of there's so many things that there's Full Metal yogurt, I mean it's become part of the lexicon. Yeah.
So many great lines have entered the zeitgeist as well.
When the film was coming out, there was the early stages of rap, and there was 2 Live Crew, and they made a song called "Oh Me So Horny, Me Love You Long Time," and they sampled. Do you know that? Yeah. And they sampled a piece of. They were Warner Brothers artists. They sampled a piece of the actress who said, "Oh, me so horny, me love you long time," and they put it in the song. And I mean, it's so cool. Yeah. It's so cool to be a part of a film that's part of culture.
And I've got to let you go, Matthew. But did you keep the camera? Are you still using the camera?
I still
Are you
have.
writing diaries?
I had someone's the camera that I had. I was staying in a little house making a movie, Jack and the Beanstalk, the real story, here in London. And when people see, I didn't know about pantomimes. See, pantomime in America is Marcel Marceau, and I learned about British pantomime. Because I'd say to people, I'm doing Jack and the Beanstalk, and they went, "Oh, I'm sorry." I said, "What are you sorry about?" And they said, "You're doing panto?" And I said, "No, I'm doing a movie called Jack and the Beanstalk." "It's a panto?" "No." They thought that my career had gotten so bad that I was doing British pantomimes. Yeah, I didn't know what it meant. But Anyway, I was staying in Hampstead in a really nice neighborhood, and I had the camera at the window, and somebody took a cobblestone and put it through the window and stole my camera bag, my
kidding me?
passport, and yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. But I got a new one. But there is something, and Stanley Kubrick knew this, that there's something about lenses. Sometimes the person that makes the lens captures magic, and the lens has the ability to capture light in a way that other lenses don't. And the lens that was on the camera that I used on Full Metal Jacket was a magic piece of glass. It was a magic camera, and I've got a new Rolleiflex, and it just doesn't have the magic that one had.
Oh
Yeah.
man, it's a shame. But would you do this for any other film?
I mean, make a diary and
Make a diary
and
or an
everything?
appumentary? Yeah.
No, because I mean, one of the luxuries of making Full Metal Jacket was time. That while Stanley was searching for his film and searching for the best way to tell his story, what it provided me with was the time to reflect on my own personal life, to reflect on the time that I was spending with my wife. Our child was born during the film. The experience of working with this great artist and having the ability to keep a diary and take those photographs. You don't have that opportunity on films today. I just finished a film in Yorkshire, between Harrogate and York.
Mm.
And it was filmed in 22 days.
A bit short diary.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely. Okay, well...
There were scenes that we shot in Full Metal Jacket that were more than 22 days.
And speaking of time, I promised your wife I would let you go at some point this evening, so I will. That's all the time we have, I'm afraid. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks, Tony Hayes, for coming. Jan Harlan, and of course, Matthew Modine. Thank you so much. Thank you.